Hey everybody, and welcome back to another compilation style video. This one is going to be on the absolute weirdest plays we saw during the 2025 season. Now, as these are previously recorded videos, there will be some things I'll say throughout that may seem a little outdated, but I do think the actual contents of the videos themselves remain relatively unaffected. Thanks for watching, and be sure to comment below which one you think was the weirdest. The other week, I detailed a play where Manny Machado made a throw from literally in the outfield grass to first base to nab the slow-footed Justin Turner. This, in almost every circumstance imaginable, is about as far as a fielder can go to throw a guy out at first, right? The only real exception to this would be a right fielder, throwing a guy out who's either exceptionally slow or just not hustling down the line. But we just saw a play that actually breaks this conventional mold, something that is truly rare and exceptionally unique, in a hitter getting thrown out at first base from left field. Facing Tommy Pham in the 6th inning of a 1-0 game, Mitchell Parker induced a line drive to left field that James Wood would come in on before reaching down to trap the ball. In a play about as close as it'll get in that respect, he would then fire a missile to first base that would two-hop into Nathaniel Lowe, who'd make sure to keep his foot on the bag before tagging O'Neal Cruz, who then came off the base. Now, what exactly was this play? Well, after Wood trapped the ball in left field, with it hitting the grass, the throw to first base was actually a forced play on Tommy Pham, who was standing around before having touched the bag, assumedly because he didn't want to pass Cruz. Then O'Neal came off the base and was easily tagged, and voila, one of the weirder looking double plays you'll ever see, and officially a 7-3 groundout. This wouldn't end up making much of a difference to the Pirates, as O'Neal Cruz would actually end up getting his revenge, crushing his first career grand slam after a little tension when a wild pitch got up near the head of Andrew McCutchen in the 7th inning. Still, even if it wasn't the most consequential, it might be the only time we'll see a play exactly like this in the 2025 season, so I did think it was worth detailing here. One of the big reasons the Red Sox were so comfortable giving Alex Bregman $40 million a season, which I still think is a pretty big overpay by the way, is that he's been so good defensively in his career, registering 29 defensive runs saved and 14 fielding runs in his first 9 years at the big league level, with some of his career best totals coming in just this past season that saw him win his first career Gold Glove. But unfortunately for Boston and Alex himself, in one of the biggest moments of yesterday's game versus the Orioles, an important early season divisional matchup, he wasn't able to come through with the glove, with the resulting carnage creating one of the crazier looking faceplants you'll ever see on an MLB field. Facing Ryan Mountcastle in the 8th inning of a 4-3 game, Justin Slayton induced a ground ball to the hole at short that was cut off nicely by Bregman, but as he started going towards second, he began to lose his balance, resulting in a hurried flip that would go past second baseman Christian Campbell into shallow right, resulting not only in Tyler O'Neill going to third, but Mountcastle getting to second. Upon replay review, it was revealed that there was an even more concerning development, that Alex had face planted with an amount of force that caused him to start bleeding from the top of his nose, as well as necessitating a visit from the training staff. I saw many online at the time worried he might have broken his nose, but thankfully he did end up being okay enough to stay in the game, giving him a front row seat for the rest of a nightmare inning that would see the Orioles push across 4 more runs, changing what was a close game before to a comfortable lead. That play, which certainly wasn't in any way devoid of effort, ended up being a huge catalyst in this inning, as normally Bregman turns that into 2 in his sleep, especially with the average speed of Mountcastle going down the line. For example, here's 3 plays from last year that were all extremely similar. Even just getting the lead runner would have been huge there. But we can't always control the balance of our bodies, so again, I don't really put the blame on him, I'm just acknowledging that it was a bit of bad luck at a time the Red Sox really didn't need it, with it being possibly the worst time that could have happened in the entire game. I'm just glad that he ended up being okay and not suffering something as severe as a concussion, which was certainly possible given the severity of that impact. Now, before we go today, I want to ask you this. Would you take the over or under on Alex Bregman hitting 25 home runs this season? For a little reference, last year he was at 26, but he hasn't got beyond that total since 2019. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Ronald Acuna Jr. came back yesterday in one of the more electric returns we've seen in recent memory, crushing a 467-foot moonshot on the first pitch in his first AB, before adding a 108-mile-per-hour single later and one of the best throws of the season from the right field corner to nab Elias Diaz trying for second. But unfortunately for him, pretty much no one else offensively showed up, resulting in the game being tied 1-1 going into the 9th, when Manny Machado crushed this go-ahead homer to put the Padres up 2-1. But all of this was simply an appetizer for what would happen in the bottom of that inning, when Eli White managed to make a mind-numbingly dumb base-running play that I don't believe I've ever seen anything quite like before. But first, let's examine how he got there. Alex Verdugo would lead off versus Robert Suarez, grounding a 3-1 fastball just past the sliding glove of Xander Bogaerts, giving the Braves a leadoff base runner. Our titular character Eli would then enter the game as a pinch runner. Sean Murphy would follow this with what amounted to essentially a swinging bunt down the third base line that had some crazy English on it, spinning fair at the last second before being fielded by Elias Diaz, who made a ridiculously good spinning play to nab the Braves' backstop by an inch. Still, a runner was now on second with one out, with Ozzie Albies coming to the dish, and the now veteran second baseman would not disappoint, lining a changeup in his center field, which Merrill got to fairly quickly. Runners on first and third and one out, right? Wrong. For some inconceivable reason, White seemed to believe that the ball was caught, which had him racing back towards second, resulting in him getting easily tagged out. Just look at this. I can't remember a time I've ever seen on a major league, minor league, or even little league field a runner believe that the ball was caught when it actually had landed, get all the way to third base, and then run back to second before getting tagged out on what wasn't even a force play. Now, the first question that pops to my mind was, what the hell was third base coach Matt Tuiasosopo doing? But as we can see from this angle, he was behaving completely normally, giving the hold-up sign as White approached third base. However, it seems that Eli misinterpreted the universal two hands up sign for a hold as Matt somehow saying the ball was caught and that he had to get back. Just look at Tuiasosopo's body language here. He had no idea what was going on. And as you might expect, this ended up being a game-losing blunder after Michael Harris II grounded out to short, sealing one of the most bizarre losses we've seen yet this year, on one of the most uniquely stupid plays I've ever seen on an MLB field. Good for the Padres, they broke their losing streak, but I have to say it does suck to me that the heroic efforts of the returning Acuna ended up being completely wasted. I've made a few videos in recent days discussing extremely rare plays that have happened to be all kind of bunched together, including a guy getting intentionally walked 4 times, the Mets getting pummeled like no team ever has before, and a game where both AL teams sent a pitcher up to the plate. But all of these, while strange, don't quite eclipse in my mind what we just saw in a game yesterday between the Guardians and Cubs, when a pitcher managed to get through an inning without retiring even a single batter. That'll make more sense in just a sec, but first we have to discuss how we got there, with Chicago's Pete Crow Armstrong leading off the bottom of the second with a line drive single to left field, before he scampered to third on Dansby Swanson's knock the other way, putting 2 runners on for Michael Busch, who would execute his own piece of professional hitting by landing an RBI single to left field, part of what has been, quietly, a very good season for the lefty. This made the score 1-0 Cubs, which would quickly grow when Carson Kelly lined a breaking ball to the left center field gap, scoring 2 runs and advancing the catcher to third after a relay throw from the shortstop missed home by a mile. This is where our real shenanigans would begin, as Guardians hurler Gavin Williams would then deliver a fastball painted over the low and outside corner, with it somehow being missed by Bo Naylor, who scrambled to the backstop to retrieve it and then flipped to Williams for the out at the plate. This was the first runner who was thrown out, not hit or retired. Nico Horner then managed to work his 2-0 count into a 3-1 walk, but as Gavin got set to deliver a 3-0 to the next hitter, he suddenly spun and threw to first, managing to pick Nico off, who had gotten a pretty healthy lead off the bag. 2 runners gone, 0 hitters. That 3-0 count would turn into a 4-pitch walk just 1 offering later, putting another guy on for Chicago. But Williams wasn't done throwing over, managing to also pick off Shaw after just 3 pitches to the next hitter. That one was a lot closer, but still no review from the Cubs, cementing this as an inning where the righty had retired 0 hitters, but got all 3 outs by nabbing base runners. And if that seems rare, it certainly was, being the first time we've seen this in the major leagues since 1985, 40 years, and the first time it's happened at the hands of a Cleveland team in recorded history. Unfortunately for the Guardians, this wouldn't end up meaning much in the game overall, as the Cubs would manage to tack on a couple more while seeing the dormant Cleveland offense only manage to score 2 of their own, with the game ending on a punch-out from Daniel Palencia to Nolan Jones, securing a 5-2 win for Chicago. Ryan Weathers first went viral back in 2020 when he made his first big league appearance during the playoffs, with this stat line from his high school career drawing a ton of attention in baseball spaces. Unfortunately, he would struggle for the first few years of his career after this, due to both injuries and underperformance, before getting traded and then getting an extended run with the Marlins last year, making 16 starts with a 3.63 ERA and 1.21 ERA+ through 86 2/3 innings. It wasn't a large sample, but it certainly was encouraging for the former first-round pick. And this year he's been even better, as after another early injury, he's managed to post a 3.28 ERA and 1.32 ERA+ through his first 5 starts. But unfortunately for him, he just had one of these appearances basically ruined, and it wasn't through any fault of his own, instead being at the hands of his catcher in one of the more bizarre injury scenes I've ever seen on a major league field. Getting ready to face the Rays in the bottom of the first, Weathers fired his final warm-up toss to catcher Nick Fortes, who then proceeded to pelt him in the back of the head with this throw to second. The lefty was, somewhat predictably, visibly frustrated on the mound afterwards, as he got up from the heap he collapsed into and snatched his hat back from Otto Lopez. You can see Fortes apologizing here shortly after as well. Here's a good angle on how hard that throw actually struck him. It was no joke. Thankfully, he would remain in the game afterwards, so I guess all is well that ends well, right? not so fast. Not only would his performance dip pretty drastically in this contest, with him giving up 4 runs, 3 earned, in just 3 innings with 1 strikeout, tying the highest amount of runs he'd given up in an appearance all year, while also registering his lowest K total as well. But there was something even more concerning that occurred in the 3rd inning, when his fastball velo dropped off a cliff, going from 95 to 97 in his first 2 innings to between 90 and 94 the entire frame. Unsurprisingly, after striking out Jose Caballero to end it, he would come out of this game. After the contest, which Miami would go on to win in a wild fashion 11-10, Weathers would confirm that it was this blow to the head that was affecting him all game, saying in this quote, "I just felt very disconnected out there. It was kind of like that episode of SpongeBob where everything's on fire inside of his brain, and I just felt like I was in pure chaos after that happened." This was obviously really concerning to hear, as that sounds like the very definition of concussion symptoms. But, thankfully, according to FDSN Marlins, he managed to pass the required protocol without issue, clearing him for baseball activities going forward. What a scary situation for the hurler, but thankfully one with consequences that seemed to be, at least at this point, about as minimal as possible. Yesterday's home run derby featured some really interesting moments, including O'Neal Cruz hitting a 513-foot, 118-mile-per-hour moonshot, the farthest non-course homer since Aaron Judge in 2017. Cal Raleigh advancing to the next round of the Derby by literal inches over Brent Rooker, and Jazz Chisholm having one of the worst home run derby performances of all time, which I'm actually going to make a video about a little bit later as well in depth. But for now, I want to talk about perhaps the most unique moment in recent home run derby history, when somebody actually robbed a home run from one of the contestants, in the finals no less. Junior Caminero was at the plate, having hit 4 home runs to that point when he crushed a line drive to straightaway left. One of the kids out there ranged back before leaping at the last second, robbing Caminero of what would have been a sure home run. It was funny to see the players' reactions immediately after as well, gesturing out to the outfield to make sure that it actually counted. But the umpires agreed that it did, putting this kid in some hot water, which you could definitely tell he understood based on the expression on his face. Fellow finals member Raleigh was at least appreciative. That was the fulfillment of a question that had been debated between me and my brother personally for a long time. Do they count the homer if somebody takes it away? And I guess the obvious answer to that is yes, they did here, and for a second it looked like it might be consequential, as Caminero got on a bit of a hot streak towards the end of the competition, entering the bonus round with 14 home runs, having a real chance to knock Cal out if he could manage to crush just 5 more. But, unfortunately for him and Rays fans everywhere, there would be only a single additional dinger he would hit, though it certainly was a prodigious one at 463 feet. After the final line drive settled into the outfield, it was official. Cal Raleigh was the 2025 Home Run Derby champ, marking the first time that either a catcher or switch hitter has ever won the competition. A truly impressive accomplishment in a season that has been full of them for big dumpers so far. In the whole of MLB history, we've only seen a couple times where multiple runners slid into home plate at the exact same time, with it mostly being the result of either an exceptionally poor read or outright terrible base coaching. Because of this, it's even more rare to see both of these runners be safe. As prior to the play we're going to be talking about today, I've only ever seen one other time where this happened, on a David Ortiz double back in 2015. But, like I just alluded to, we got a chance to see exactly this yesterday, when the Phillies pulled off one of the rarest plays possible on an MLB field. But before we get there, let's talk about the game overall. They were facing off against their division rival Mets, with Philadelphia ace Zach Wheeler on the mound, who managed to work his way out of a tough spot in the first inning, when he got a 1-out, bases-loaded double play, which is a pretty accurate summation of how things are going for the Mets right now. But at least they would themselves post some pretty nice pitching for their first 3 innings, before running into a little trouble in the 4th, when Blade Tidwell, awesome name by the way, was facing off against Otto Kemp with the bases loaded. On a 1-2, he too grounded a ball on the infield, this one on a high hop to third, which allowed for just enough time for Kemp to beat out the throw to first, scoring the initial run of the game on a hustle fielder's choice. New York would then bring in lefty Jose Castillo to face Brandon Marsh, and promptly see him give up a flare single to left field, pushing the lead to 2-0. That's where things would stay until the top of the 6th, with Wheeler managing to complete 5 scoreless innings before departing due to a high pitch count. This meant that when Pete Alonso registered the first run of the night for the Mets on a towering fly ball to center field off Taijuan Walker, the lead was cut in half, putting this game back within reach, which was shortly after followed by a Jeff McNeil long ball as well. Suddenly, we were tied, shocking just one fan and irritating the heck out of Walker. This brings us to our real action frame, the 7th, where after we would see 2 exceptional defensive plays made in the top of the inning, one by Trey Turner and one by Kemp, Philly would get off to a rip-roaring start with Brandon Marsh lacing a double down the left field line, before Trey Turner did the same down the right field, pushing the go-ahead run across and putting an insurance one on second base with nobody out. Alex Bohm would keep the good times coming with an opposite field single served into right field. The Mets would then bring in another guy out of the bullpen, but it made no difference, with Nick Castellanos flipping his own single into center field shortly after. Following a JT Realmuto walk, the bases were all loaded for Bryson Stott, and he delivered, crushing a 1-1 hanging breaking ball out to center field, just missing a home run before seeing the ball ricochet perfectly to left fielder Brandon Nimmo. But in a somewhat bizarre scene that was developing, Castellanos had got an incredibly bad jump off of second base, resulting in him being in lockstep with Realmuto as they both slid into the plate at the same time successfully. This looked very similar to that Red Sox play I mentioned before, only, oddly enough, both slid in exactly the same fashion. Feet first, off to the right, creating an interesting looking mirror effect. This is easily one of the rarest moments you'll ever come across on a baseball field, let alone on a major league field. This made the score 8-2, and as you'd probably expect, it never really felt close again, with Castellanos crushing a 2-run home run in the next inning before Tyrod Taylor flew out to right field to end it, sealing the victory for the Phillies and breaking the current division tie they had with New York for the time being. I made a video earlier this year about the cheapest walk-off home run in MLB history, being this 308-foot dink-doink down the right field line in Fenway Park, a ball almost 20 feet shallower than the next closest game-ending shot. But you have to give it one thing. At least it legitimately went over the wall, which is more than you can say for a home run we saw yesterday that was not only a couple feet shallower, but a ball that would have been a home run in 0 out of 30 MLB ballparks somehow. Trevor Story was at the plate, taking a first pitch slider inside for ball 1, then a sinker to make the count 2-0. It was then that Junis located a breaking ball pretty well low and outside, seeing Trevor hit it down the right field line, sending Jhonkensy Noel ranging over and then leaping near the stands. But unfortunately for him, he wouldn't be able to make the catch, resulting in a bunch of confused faces, and an initially called foul ball. This would be overturned after a lengthy review, with the umpires in New York agreeing that it was a home run, but perhaps not for the reason that you'd think. You see, as Noel attempted his leap, he managed to get the ball in his glove, but in the process of doing so, saw it, without him having complete control, roll off of the foul pole, essentially ramming it into the one area that would make it a home run, because you see, if he would have dropped it over the fence in foul territory, it would have been a simple ground rule double, but instead he had the misfortune of playing it off of the pesky pole, creating a 306-foot bizarre blast, the second Shallowest home run in the StatCast era. This created a situation that I'm not sure I've ever seen before, which was pointed out aptly on Twitter by Dan, or Dan0701, being that it was an over-the-fence home run that should have been a tank in exactly 0 out of 30 MLB ballparks. This is truly insane to me, and pretty much as singular as a single play gets in my opinion. The Red Sox would eventually go on to win this one by a final of 6-4, with Aroldis Chapman logging yet another scoreless appearance with 0 hits given up, a pretty insane feat that tacks on to an existing run I detailed a bit more a couple days ago. Regardless, this helped keep Boston firmly in the AL East picture, still only 2.5 games behind the division-leading Blue Jays, and currently tied with the Yankees. If you watch enough baseball, you're going to see some interference calls, whether it be on the batter for falling across home plate as a catcher goes to make a throw, on a catcher for allowing a batter's swing to hit his glove, or on a fan for touching a ball that's in the field of play, with the last one usually resulting in said fan getting kicked out of the venue completely. But one thing we don't see very often are interference calls on the umpires themselves. But that's actually exactly what just happened during a game between the Mets and the Yankees, and it was truly weird to watch. DJ LeMahieu was up to bat for the Yankees in the bottom of the 6th with 2 guys on, coming off of his first home run of the season earlier in the contest. Facing his first pitch, he would take a sinker low, with both runners taking off, making it after a throw from Luis Torrens was late. However, almost immediately following this toss, we saw interference be called by the home plate umpire, James Jean. Not on LeMahieu, mind you, but on himself, and rightly so, because, as you can see here, as Torrens goes to make a throw, he makes contact with the face mask of Jean, forcing the play to be dead. Little side note here, but I apologize for not having a full speed replay of this one. It's actually really hard to find such a thing in any of the databases I use, so I'm more so going off of clips posted online for this one. This would put runners back at first and second, which honestly wouldn't end up mattering very much, as DJ would ground out a few pitches later to end the frame. Still, who knows? Maybe if there are guys on second and third instead of first and second, relief pitcher Brazoban would have pitched him a little differently, for fear of giving up a wild pitch or something. But I guess we'll never know at this point. As for the rest of the game, it would be hotly contested between the two New York teams, with veteran second baseman LeMahieu continuing to show out for his part, making this sliding play in the 7th inning to save a potential run. He would also later crush this line drive with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 8th that, unfortunately for him and Yankee fans everywhere, would be caught by Juan Soto. 1 Francisco Lindor sac fly and 2 Edwin Diaz strikeouts later, and the Mets had managed to secure a crosstown victory, partially with the help of one of the rarer calls in the entire MLB rulebook. When position players pitch, things can get strange, whether it's seeing superstars get punched out with pitches ranging from the 60s to the near 90s, guys using batting helmets out there, or even players managing to tie all-time records versus basically nothing balls. But we just saw something that, in my opinion, surpasses all of that in terms of pure weirdness. A player taking a legitimate Happy Gilmore-style swing to add power versus a pitch coming in at under 50 miles an hour. The Orioles were facing the Rockies yesterday, and absolutely crushing them leading up to our highlighted at-bat, scoring 17 runs by the bottom of the 8th on 15 hits and 6 extra base hits. Colorado, in response, sent position player Kyle Farmer out there to try to save some of their arms in the pen. It would be on his first pitch to catcher Alex Jackson that he would see the veteran backstop take a step towards him on the mound before unleashing this swing, crushing a 107-mile-per-hour fly ball to deep right center that ended up traveling over 400 feet. Just look at the slow-mo of that hack. The amount of coordination, even versus a 47-mile-per-hour bowling ball, is impressive to me, and has to be one of the few times I've ever seen somebody actually attempt to swing this ambitious and have it work out for them. To Farmer's credit, he would manage to end the entire inning after just 7 total pitches, despite giving up a couple more hits, inducing a double play for 2 and then a fly ball to end it. If it wasn't exceptionally obvious, the Rockies would go on to lose by that final score of 18-0, with, ironically, probably the most notable play from the game overall coming during one of the most extreme levels of garbage time you will ever see in a Major League contest. Little side note here before we go, but since there are going to be a number of Baltimore fans I'm sure watching this video, I also wanted to point out a little fact I learned in retrospect, which was this was the largest shutout in the history of the Baltimore Orioles franchise, which is a pretty impressive accomplishment when you consider the fact that they've been around at this point for more than 70 years as a member of Major League Baseball. Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.